Hi, I'm Nina Ramos. This is Nirbasam Yoga, and welcome back to your Yoga Studio crash course. Now, today we are going to be talking about Yoga Studio rules and guidelines. Now, I can't speak for every single yoga studio because every yoga studio has their own set of rules. So this is more just coming from my personal experience working front desk at yoga studios, doing classes and workshops for yoga studios, and just what I could find online as well. On top of that, I'm also going to be giving you some tips for your first time going to a yoga studio and just little things that they don't really tell you because there's not really like a handbook. It's just kind of information that you get over time and stuff that I just wish that I knew before going to a yoga class for the first time. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, first we're going to be talking about like specific studio rules and just like general practices that most yoga studios ask that you follow. All right, so rule number 1, please come in or have clothes that you are ready to move in. I know this sounds self-explanatory, but you would be surprised how many times I've seen people come into a yoga class with jeans. And it's not so much that it's like not allowed, like you're not allowed to do yoga in jeans. Like, yeah, you can, but why would you want to? They're not comfy, they don't really have a lot of give, and you're not going to be able to go into the full postures that you want to get into. That made sense. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's more comfortable, and they don't even need to really be like leggings or anything like that. You can wear just anything that moves, that you're able to stretch and work out in, anything like that. Cool? Great. Awesome. All right, rule number 2 is no cell phones in the studio. This one is kind of a big one. Now, I'll talk about like some exceptions to that a little bit later, but really, yoga is like the one time that we can just like not be connected to our phones and not have to worry about like answering texts or emails or anything like that. It's just the one time that you can really just be at one with yourself without any distractions, and it's so beneficial. So having your phone or your Apple Watch on you to rob you of that is just kind of, yeah, it's just counterintuitive because we really want to focus on us. Because when do we have time to just sit alone with our thoughts and just like be and just exist? We don't really have those opportunities anymore, at least not most of us. I know some people, they can be away from their phone and it's fine. I'm glued to my phone. I'll fully admit it. Absolutely. I spend way too much time on my phone. I'm trying to get my screen time down, but I'm a millennial. I'm glued to my phone. What can I say? So exceptions to this, I would say, if you have an emergency, if you need to have your phone on you, like there's somebody that that's in the hospital, they're not doing very well, any sort of emergency like that, talk to the teacher. I'm sure that there's some way that, you can work it out, that it's absolutely fine. Other than that, I would recommend just like keeping it in a cubby. Usually there's like cubbies, or you can put your phone in your bag, put it away, making sure that not only is it like on silent, but the vibration is off. I usually turn on airplane mode and do not disturb mode just because they kind of do two different things. Like airplane mode stops you from getting calls and texts, but it doesn't stop you from getting alarms, which I have had alarms go off in the middle of classes, and they don't stop until someone else stops them. They just keep going. So that's why I also put on do not disturb, because do not disturb sometimes doesn't cut out phone calls and texts, but it does stop alarms from happening. So that's why I put on both. That's just because I'm also very paranoid that my phone will go off in the middle of class. I don't want that happening. Or just turn it off. You can turn that off too. But like I said before, if there is an emergency, anything like that, talk to the teacher, but I would also put on do not disturb mode just in case. You can still get the notifications, it'll light up, but that way it won't vibrate. That way you won't really disturb anyone else in the class, because that's also a concern of the teachers, because I've had phones go off on vibrate in like the middle of a shavasana or the meditation practice where you're, laying nice and still and it's quiet time where we're trying to meditate, and it has been distracting. So it's just things to keep in mind. But yeah, if there's an emergency, if you have to have your phone on you, just in case you have to get up in the middle of class, most of the time teachers will accommodate you for that, because we get it, like life happens, and it's still amazing that you're able to come into class. So great. All right, rule number 3, no shoes in studio. Now, I know that every single yoga studio is just a little bit different. Some studios have a lobby area before you get into the actual classroom. Some studios, it's just one room and all of the cubbies and stuff where you put your belonging is in the same space as the space where you're practicing. So usually I just take off my shoes kind of as soon as I get in. And there's a couple of reasons why we don't bring shoes into the studio. So one is because when we're practicing yoga, we want to be able to ground, especially when we're doing balancing postures. It's just really nice to have that connection into your mat, and it's much easier to press into all 4 corners of the feet, because that's really what you want to do when we're doing like a balancing posture like tree or something like that. You want to be able to have that connection, because when you're wearing shoes it's a little bit more difficult. Another reason why we do that is for hygienic reasons, because we are getting very close to the ground. Even though we have our mats and everything, we're still we're right next to the ground. So when we bring shoes into the studio, you're bringing in dirt and bacteria, and it just kind of opens up for all sorts of, gross things. Even though, usually yoga studios will clean the floors like every single day, but depending on how many classes are going on in between, there's a lot of potential germs and stuff. So yeah, just kind of want to stay away from that. So especially when you're going into the actual space where you're taking class, just take off your shoes. Great. Awesome. Okay. So rule number, we're on 4, right? We're on 4. Yeah, we're on 4. Okay, rule number 4. I would highly recommend, and most yoga studios would recommend, that you get to the studio at least 15 minutes before class starts. Now, when it's your first time going to the studio, I like to arrive even 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes early. I'm also crazy, not really. But I do like to be early, especially if I don't know what the parking situation is going to be like. If I don't know the area, maybe you might get lost. I get lost a lot, a lot. And Google Maps doesn't always take you to the correct studio. I work at a studio where literally Google Maps has no idea where we are. So I get a lot of people who come in late to class, and, I let them in because it's not their fault. It's Google Maps' fault. But I really, really like to get to a studio when I'm going there for the first time. I like to get there really early, not only so I can find the parking spot, make sure that I know where the studio is, but to also get my bearings, kind of be able to see the studio, kind of take a little bit of a tour, see what's going on, maybe talk to the front desk people if it's a bigger studio, just kind of get my bearings and sort of know what's going on. I also like to get a good spot in the class as well, and then maybe talk to the teacher a little bit, especially because I do have a lower back injury. So I usually like to tell my teachers that beforehand, just to kind of give them an idea of okay, this is my limitation. So if I'm not taking something that's super, super far, I'm taking modifications for that. Or if you want to offer a modification, I'll gladly take that. Just little things. So yeah, usually really, really recommend getting there relatively early. Now, some studios have late policies. So if you arrive any time after the class starts, some studios will literally lock the doors. I would definitely check on their websites, or if you do know that you are running late and you won't be able to get there early or even on time, that you know that you're going to be a little bit late, I would give the studio a call for sure. Because sometimes if you arrive late and you haven't given them any notice, you'll lose the class, and then you'll lose out on the money that you paid to get into the class. You signed up ahead of time. So that's really unfortunate. So that's why I really recommend that, like, if you know that you're going to be late, then call. Now, some studios are very lenient when it comes to being late. Some studios, I know that I work at a studio that doesn't have a late policy, that you can come in at any time. The door might be locked, but we'll always accommodate, and that's because we work with special populations that might not be able to keep to a certain schedule, and that's absolutely fine. So, you know, there's a lot of wiggle room, and I definitely recommend that if you do feel like you're going to be running late or that you're getting lost, like, give someone a call. Even if it's after the class, a good portion of the time they'll be able to accommodate you, maybe reschedule you for another time. I just had a situation a few weeks ago where I got lost getting to a studio. I had no idea where it was, and by the time I was able to get through to the owner of the studio, the class had already started, and I just don't like to go to a class late. It's just a personal, it's a personal thing of mine. I hate being late to things. So I asked her if I could reschedule for another time, even though it was after the class had already started, and she completely accommodated me. So, you know, it's just important to sort of ask and get in communication with the yoga studios. But for the average population, I would highly recommend get to your studio about 15 minutes ahead of time. That way, like, you don't have to worry, you're not rushing, especially when it's the first time that you're going to a yoga studio, because you may not have any idea where you're going. So yeah, just highly recommend. All right. So number 5, bring water. Please bring your own water. Like, even if you have to go to a gas station and buy a bottle of water beforehand because you don't have a reusable water bottle or anything like that, you have no idea how much you will need it, especially if you're going to a hot yoga class. Please bring water. Stay hydrated. It is so important. I've seen so many people go to yoga classes without yoga. No. I've seen so many people go to yoga classes without water, and yeah, you can just tell that they're really, really thirsty the whole time, and not every single yoga studio is going to offer like bottles of water. So really, really recommend that not only you bring your own water, but you stay hydrated the whole time. Maybe not taking like giant gulps of water, because that can also be bad, and you know, it can it can upset your stomach, but just like making sure that you're staying hydrated, because it is still a workout. Even if you're doing yin or a restorative class, like having water, it's just very nice. I highly recommend. Bring water. Have water with you. I want everyone to be safe. Number 6, please put your props away when you're done with them. So whether we are doing a very prop heavy class like yin or restorative yoga, or just borrowing some blocks, when you're done with them, please return them in the way that you found them. Not only is it just a really nice way to sort of show the people who work at the studio that you care, that, you know, just showing them that kindness, but also it's a way for us to practice cleanliness, or shaucha, the word that we use in Sanskrit and in yoga, which is an ideal that we try and follow. And just paying it forward and being kind and showing the studio that you care for the space and the props that we are able to use for free. So it's just a really nice thing. Yeah. Can you tell that I used to work front desk at a yoga studio? Yeah, I'll be completely blunt for, you know, I'll be completely blunt. So I worked at a yoga studio where we had 3 pretty big studios, and we would have to clean all of the floors and all of the mirrors, which they would be like 2 walls worth of mirrors in each classroom. And when people just put all of the props away, in a really messy way and just kind of shoved blankets in there and shoved bolsters into the cubbies, it added a really good chunk of time onto our already like long list of things that we had to do in order to keep the studio clean and ready to be opened up. And like, although it is a part of our jobs, it's just really nice when our students are able to sort of help us out, because, you know, there's only one of us working the front desk, but there's all of those people who are borrowing the props. So when we each do our part to put the props away in the way that they were found, we're just doing something very small that helps someone else do, you know, a little bit less. Because the people who work the front desk are the people who teach the classes, who have to clean up when everyone else is gone. It is a lot of work, and so anything that I can do to help people out in that situation, I try and do it. And I just recommend that when you go to a yoga studio, you do the same thing. Again, this is just my personal like thing, just working at yoga studios. It's a really nice thing when your students like really try and put things back the way that they were, even if it's not done exactly right. Just the care, it just makes you feel good. It makes you feel like people care. So that's always just really nice. All right. So now I'm going to talk more about like tips and stuff for you to practice when you're going to a yoga studio, whether you've been to one a couple times or whether it's your first time going to a yoga studio and practicing in a group setting. So, and I'm not going to number them because I'm going to lose track. I was already starting to lose track of the other ones. So my first tip, and I just used numbers. I'm already breaking my own rules. But this tip is probably one of the most important things that I came away from my teacher training with, that I did not know that you could do in a yoga class, which is at any point in your practice, if you're tired, if you feel like you've pulled a muscle, if you're feeling like you can't do any more yoga, just drop down into child's pose. Now, if you don't know what that looks like, in the next video, we will go over what the poses are, what they look like, all of that. But child's pose is just a very like basic restorative posture. It's very, very easy, and it's just a posture that we can use to rest, and literally at any point. And I really recommend that you take this if you're feeling like lightheaded or nauseous or anything like that. Now, of course, if you need to leave the studio, if you feel like not okay, leave the studio, go ahead, like go to the bathroom, excuse yourself. If you have someone there with you, see if you can get someone to escort you out just to be sure, especially if we're feeling like lightheaded or nauseous. We always want to make sure that we're being safe. But I really, really recommend that if anything is, you know, too strenuous, if you feel like something isn't safe for your body, take child's pose. It's so simple, and I did not know that I could do this. And I remember going to my first day of teacher training, and I was not I wasn't that strong yet. I had only been doing yoga for a very short amount of time. I know I was crazy for doing my teacher training that soon, but I just knew what I wanted to do. I just knew. And look where I am now. So, but I remember doing a 75-minute Hatha Vinyasa sequence, and I was in so much pain. I was pushing myself through every single vinyasa. I was pushing myself way too far because everyone else was doing it, and I didn't know that I didn't have to do it. I didn't know that I could just go into child's pose, and looking back on it, I wish that I had, because I was in so much pain for like over a week because I wasn't used to using my muscles in that way. I wasn't that far into my practice yet. And so it was just, yeah. And then I felt really bad about myself because I felt like I was the only one in pain when we were doing that sequence, and I just didn't have to be. And that was a lot of ego. So yeah, don't let your ego get in the way. Your ego is not your amigo. As a student that was at the studio that I used to work at had that on a shirt, and I always thought that was really funny. But yeah, I really recommend that you do that. And I mean, I know as a yoga teacher, I really love it when my students take that control and say like, I can't do any more than this. I'm going to drop down into child's pose. It makes me so happy. I just like, oh, it's so good. I just want everyone to like sit in their power of choice and just like choose that this is too much for me. I love it. I want people to take control of their bodies and of their practice and say like when enough is enough. Because so many times we just keep pushing, and it's like sometimes we just can't keep going, and that's fine. There's literally nothing wrong with it. And if I ever feel like something is unsafe for me, you know I'm gonna be going down into child's pose. I do not care. I don't owe anything to anyone. And if any teacher tries to tell you that you have to push through something or you have to keep doing a posture that you feel is unsafe, you say no. You just say no. And I know that that's scary. I know that that's a lot, and most of the time we won't want to do that. I know I never want conflict or anything like that, but I think that it's very important to stick up for ourselves because we're the only ones that are going to do it. We have to live in this body, and if you feel like something is unsafe for you, then it's unsafe for you. And don't let anyone try and pressure you into doing something that's unsafe. You don't have to do any of it if you don't want to. So I really, really implore you to empower yourselves to say when enough is enough and to take child's pose. Set those positive, healthy boundaries for yourself. It's so important. Okay, next tip, which kind of goes into the child's pose, but also kind of goes past it. And that is to not compare yourself to anyone else in the class. If you're at a yoga studio for the first time, I know I always feel like, oh my gosh, everyone else is like so much better at yoga than I am. They're so much more flexible. They're so much stronger. They're all of these things. And you just get into this negative thought cycle. And when that happens, we make mistakes and we push ourselves into doing poses that aren't necessarily safe for us. And that's when injury can happen. The amount of times that I have injured myself doing things that I know I shouldn't have done, but because I felt like I had to, is ridiculous. And I instantly get checked with karma. That's my karma telling me, nope, no, you can't do that. Your body can't do that. You're not ready. And, you know, such is life, but I really implore you to not compare yourself to anyone else in the class. You know, it's impossible to not look around, and sometimes it's really nice motivation that's like, oh my gosh, I can get there one day. Like, oh my gosh, my practice can be as beautiful as that person's practice. That's awesome. I wish that I could be there, and with enough practice, I will. So sometimes it's good motivation, but to compare yourself to someone else when most of the time the person who is going into those deeper postures, who are doing the more advanced moves, have been doing it for years, like years. And maybe even sometimes they might have hypermobility, they might just have really, really open joints and be able to get into deeper postures, and that's not something that you'll be able to do anytime soon without like a lot of work at it. So it's just really, as in life, we shouldn't compare ourselves to other people because everyone is different. We shouldn't compare our practice to anyone else's practice because all of our bodies are different. We just work in different ways, and we all have things that we're really good at. Sometimes we might have really strong practices, really grounded. We're able to stay in postures for a very long time. Other times it's very flowy. You might be super flexible. You might be amazing at balancing postures. There's so many different things that you can bring to a practice that make you special and that makes you love the practice. So to compare yourself to anyone else is to just do yourself a huge disservice. And I really also want you to remember that everyone started where you are right now. Everyone has been there in that place where we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what it's supposed to feel like in our bodies. You know, oh my gosh, I'm not doing everything as deep as everyone else. I'm not doing it right. There's no like really right or wrong way to practice yoga as long as we're practicing yoga. Yes, sure, there are a couple of little alignment things that we want to just keep in mind to protect our joints, but in terms of what it should look like, it's absolutely ridiculous, because what should matter is how it feels. That's where the yoga is. It's how we feel in our bodies, in our minds. How do the postures feel to you? Not how does it look? Not how can I photograph this? How can I, make this look cool? Because that will come with time. It'll be beautiful and amazing because it's your practice, but remember that we were all there. We've all been in that awkward place where we didn't know what was going on. We don't know how to do these poses and we're just so unsure. So just try not to compare yourself too much to the other practitioners that are in class with you, because everyone's practice is going to look different and everyone's practice is beautiful regardless of how deep you can get into postures, how strong you are in your postures. It doesn't matter because it's beautiful. Because it's amazing, because it's yoga. I think that this is so important, because we so often do not give ourselves the grace of being imperfect at things, because we want to be amazing at things right away. And we're so afraid of sitting in that awkward, uncomfortable place where we don't know what we're doing. But it's okay to not know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time just in my life. I don't know what I'm doing from day to day, and that's totally fine. It's fine to be unsure. Nothing needs to be sure. Nothing needs to be set in stone. We're all just trying to live our lives, man. I'm gonna get into oh my gosh. Oh man, I've had too much coffee and it's getting way too late in the day. It's dark out right now. Oh my gosh. I'm on another level right now. Oh man. Okay. I gotta calm down. I gotta get off my soapbox and just chill. But I do think that rule, those two are not that rule, but those two tips that I just gave you are the most important things to remember when you're going to, especially your first group class. Just give yourself so much grace to make mistakes and to not know what you're doing. It doesn't need to look perfect. It doesn't need to do any of that. Just let yourself experience it and just sit in the present moment. That's really all that any yoga teacher can ask of their student. It's just be present and just allow yourself to give into the process. It's all about the process. It's all about the journey. We're all on our own journey. And it's important not to get competitive with your fellow yogis, because it's not a race. It's not anything like that. It's not a sport. There's no winners or losers or anything like that. The only time that you lose is when you injure yourself doing something that you shouldn't be doing because you're getting competitive. Yeah, that's not what yoga is about. We're all just trying to get the benefits and just do our own practice and just have a good time. We're just here to have a good time. So next little tip for you. I know that we've talked about props before. We've talked about bolsters, blankets, blocks. Oh my gosh, I cannot stop. I'm so sorry. For our yin and restorative practices. But I would just really recommend, at least when you're still relatively new to your practice and you're going to a studio for the first time, trying out a teacher for the first time, I would highly recommend grabbing at least one block, if not 2 blocks. I'm of the mindset that I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It's just a really good tool for you to get the ground a little bit closer to you, and especially because if we're used to practicing at home, we don't really have blocks at home unless we're using books and other things. It's just nice to sort of have that to really work on your alignment, especially to be able to bring the ground closer to you. That way we can align our spine, because my spine is so messed up. Most of us have that rounded shoulder thing. I've been trying to open it up, but it's really hard. It's difficult. It's a hard thing to do when you spend so much time playing Sims 4 like I do. But I would really, really recommend grabbing some blocks when you're going into really any class. I love blocks. I love being able to get the ground closer to me, just in case. Most of the time I end up, getting into a posture. I start out doing blocks and then I'll kind of breathe into it and get a little bit deeper, and then I'm able to kind of push the blocks out of the way. But just in case, I always just like to have them just in case, because you never know what your teacher is going to have you get into, and especially if you have any injuries or prior injuries, anything like that, it's just really nice to have that. Great. So next little tip. If you have any injuries, anything like if you're pre-op, post-op, if you're pregnant, if you have high or low blood pressure, scoliosis, anything that you think might pertain to your practice, let the teacher know beforehand. They may be able to give you some variations or modifications on different postures. And even if they're not able to give you those modifications, it's just really nice for us to know that if your practice looks different, that we know not to adjust you in that way, that you're trying to work out the posture in the way that feels natural to you. This is the reason why I don't really do hands-on assists anymore, because I don't know what's going on in someone's body. Or if I do, I'll really gauge the person and have a conversation with them that's is this okay? How does this feel? I'm gonna do this, and you tell me if this is good. Because I really want to make sure that if I am correcting alignment issues that I see, that I'm not potentially hurting somebody. So having that conversation before class, just so that you can know, okay, this is why this person is doing this, it's just really, really great. And like I said, they may be able to give you some modifications that you wouldn't have really thought of before. Because we're not here at yoga to hurt ourselves or to exacerbate injury. We're here to heal. So there's always, when we're doing physical practices, there's always a chance of injury. It's unavoidable. As healing and as amazing as yoga can be, there's still always a chance. Doesn't matter what practice you're doing. Probably the only time that you maybe would never get injured is restorative, and even then you never know what could happen. So we just always want to make sure that we're being as safe as possible, especially if you have previous injury or a history of illness, anything like that. We don't want to exacerbate anything. So it's very, very important that we know about these things before you do the class. Okay, so the next things that we're going to talk about are more just kind of hygienic housekeeping things that you just may not have really thought about. So first, make sure that you wear deodorant and not perfume or essential oils. A lot of people have allergies to that. So when we wear a lot of colognes or things like that, it can exacerbate, and especially it can make it really difficult to breathe. And so when we're doing yoga, breath is a huge part of that. So just, being mindful of the scents that you usually have on. I would just recommend not wearing any kind of a special scent, even essential oils, because you never know how people's reactions are going to be. But do make sure that you wear deodorant. That's very important. Yeah, because we want to, we want to be hygienic. Great. And then also, if you are a sweaty person, I would highly recommend just bringing a towel. I know that some people have hot yoga towels that literally cover the entire length of the mat. Not only is it just for hygienic purposes, we don't just want to be dripping sweat the entire time, especially if we're doing hot yoga, but also because you lose grip on your mat when you're sweating a lot. So it can just affect your practice, and it can get really, really annoying. I know my hands get super, super clammy. So I have a microfiber mat that's literally made out of the same material that you would see in microfiber towels. And it just soaks up a lot of the moisture, the moisture that happens on my hands if I'm doing a really rigorous practice. So I'm not constantly slipping, because it got so annoying. I couldn't just keep reaching over from my towel and wiping my hands. It was constant. Is that gross? I'm sorry if that's TMI, but it's my body. I can't do anything about it. So, you know, just having like a little hand towel by you just to make sure that you're not losing grip or that you're not like dripping sweat, especially if you're using a studio mat. You don't want to be dripping sweat all over that because, yeah, other people have to use it. Okay, well, that is it for the yoga studio tips and rules and guidelines and little secrets from me to you. All right, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all of those good things. Again, feel free to ask any questions in the comments, email, anything like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Nina Ramos. This is Nerd Blossom Yoga, and I hope that you have a Nerd Blossom day.